Schenck, welcome to the show. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Nick. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, you're the founding owner and CEO of Ballyhoo Workshop. So, tell me what Ballyhoo Workshop is.
Yes, that is true. 13 years ago, founded a company. It is a communications firm, basically, and we focus on brand strategy and creative services. So that means any way that you're communicating to your employee audience, investor audience, we are creating those materials to do that in all the different mediums, whether that be print, presentation, video, or digital. So we get to create lots of cool communication materials and have a lot of fun doing it. So it's good stuff.
So, you said employee and investor as potential audiences. What about customer?
We do. We do a lot of business to business work largely and focus more in that kind of corporate communications space. So our primary audiences for our clients are typically their employees, other businesses, investors, those types of things. So sort of differentiating us from, being in the advertising world or consumer products, things of that nature, we're really more focused on that corporate communications side.
I haven't heard about this part of your industry before. Why does a company hire somebody like you to handle employee and or investor communication as opposed to just doing it themselves? What are they trying to achieve there?
Sure. Well, typically we'll get involved really more on the kind of the brand side. So it gives the employees, investors, sort of that sense that there is really care given to the communication that's sent to them, right? So it's not just an email that's sent over or something of that nature. It's something that's been prepared, really thought about, thought through. So maybe it's a video from your CEO to talk about kind of what's happening right now, how's the quarter been, that sort of thing. Or it's an annual report so that you're sending that out to investors and other folks that have an interest in your company, and you're really showcasing all the great work that you've done by utilizing really strong creative. That might happen also with presentations. So your CEO or other executives are talking to you at an event and they really want to have that material well prepared and well thought of. Those audiences are very important to them. And by utilizing strong creative and strong communication materials, that shows those audiences that they care that much more.
This sounds like something that, large companies would do. Are most of your customers large or also kind of small and medium-sized businesses?
We all across the board, we are small companies, large companies. We also do a lot of nonprofit work as well. That's been very important to us over these past, especially several years. Really just trying to increase the level of the kind of the visual communication that's happening to these different audiences. So, no, it doesn't need to be all large companies. We're definitely working with tons of small ones that want to show themselves, whether that be on their website or again, presentations or video, that they care more, that their message really needs a strong brand and a strong storyline and a strong visual to it. So, companies of all sizes.
We jumped right into the business there, but I'm curious to go back to the kind of the founding moment. You said it's been about 13 years. What was the motivation to start your own company?
Sure, yeah. It's started in started as part of a large agency and really loved that work. Grew up in a large agency, learned a ton from some really strong communicators, really strong designers. But I was finding that I was spending all of my time working and not enough of my time with my family and friends and doing all the other things that brought me joy. And so I decided to start this agency and bring a couple folks along with it to really be able to take advantage of sort of much more of that balance that, we get to do great work for really great clients, but also we get to step away and have sort of a much more flexible environment to be able to hang out with our kids or our families or, the folks that are kind of important parts of our lives. So it was really to find a place where that balance we really felt like existed a little bit more.
So when you took that first big leap and started this, did you have an anchor customer that you brought with you, or did you like really start from scratch on the customer side?
We started from scratch, but a number of colleagues from that agency left to go on and lead other communications for other companies and things of that nature. And so, honestly, so much of our business has been built on word of mouth, and it's either from those folks that were colleagues with us previously that have gone on, like I said, to lead communications, or just folks that I know that are looking for great creative for brand strategy. So a little bit of both, a little bit of like learning how to do business development, but also had proven myself over 15 years or so, kind of already being in that industry and just making some great contacts and learning a lot from different folks around me.
I imagine that 15 years of experience is where the confidence came from to go out on your own, right? So many people say, "Yeah, I want to have my own business, start my own business," but not many people follow through.
True. Yes. I think, it's like the older we get, the more confident we are, and the more we're like, we're just going to give it a shot and see kind of what happens." It's, there were great people that started it with me that kind of came along for the ride. So I felt like I was well supported. One thing I learned early on too is to add really strong partners to the mix. So legal partners, finance partners, things of that nature, insurance partners that help you kind of figure out, okay, how do I actually make this thing real? And that we're not just kind of doing projects and seeing how it works. That learning from folks that have either done that before and or advised on that too was super helpful to kind of at least give foundation. And I mean, I'm not going to pretend like it was all sunshine and roses. It was, you're like, oh God, what do we do? What just happened? Like, is this really going to work? And we got lucky and it did. And a lot of talented people doing the work, of course, kept that going. So, feel very lucky to have had a great crew of folks along the way from the beginning and some really strong partners to advise and just kind of be part of it from the beginning too.
So you mentioned, part of the motivation for doing this was some level of personal freedom to spend time with your family, kids, whatever the situation is. But being a business owner, there's two sides of this coin, right? It's also you're working 24/7. So what was your reality compared to what you were trying to achieve?
That's a great point. I'm pretty sure I work more hours now than I did when I was in a kind of if you want to call it a 9 to 5 job, but it's on my terms and it's when I want to. So I might, start with a group in the morning and then I take a lunch break and go do a workout, or I leave at 3:30 to go watch my kids, play baseball. But then I'm back at it again at 6:30 or 7 and tying up some loose ends. So it's really more that mentality. And that is kind of what spread through the team is, listen, you're all grown-ups. You know what needs to get done and when it needs to be done. So we'll always kind of group together at sort of the same time in the morning to make sure that we're all aligned for the day, and or for the week. But, outside of that, we understand that folks have other things that are going on in their lives. And really, we just need to make sure we're communicating with each other so we can back each other up and those types of things. So yeah, I think I probably work a lot more than I might have in a typical, but like I said, it's a little bit more on my terms, and I find ways to be able to balance all the other things that are important in my life along with that.
One of the things I really enjoy in these conversation is learning how other leaders establish and keep great cultures. So if you give me a minute here to try to explain my question, I'm just assuming that most of your staff works remotely. Perhaps everybody works remotely. And, I appreciate what you say about treating people like adults, expecting them to get the work done. And you mentioned this maybe daily kind of stand up meeting. Of course, us as business owners and leaders, we'd love to have a team full of A players that can manage themselves. Not everybody in the world is like that. So you have done something to either attract a bunch of folks that can work independently, remotely, maintain this culture. Can it tell me how you achieve all of this? Because it's a very complex thing to manage.
You are correct. It is. It's complex and it's been a lot of learning along the way. We started as an agency that met in the office every day, all the time. And yes, there was a lot of flexibility. So we had folks that were doing job shares, so they weren't necessarily working every day. We had some folks that would come in at different times and or leave a little bit earlier depending on what they had going on, or at any particular week somebody might leave early for something or another or duck out in the middle of the day for something. And over time, we evolved into being a lot more remote. Of course, COVID had a lot to do with that, right? We were 7 years in at the time, a little over 7 years in at the time, and we had pretty much been meeting in the office every day. And so, of course, had to learn how to be remote. And so we kind of continued that even after COVID. We got rid of our initial office, got a smaller one so that we could meet. We now meet once a week in person. Sometimes it's a little bit more than that, but we always meet on Wednesdays in the office so that we can, again, to your point about culture, kind of maintain some of that one-on-one interaction, some of the fun stuff. We'll often bring in lunch. We're showcasing some of our projects. It's where we get to actually like see each other and have fun and laugh a lot more than we might be able to when it's remote. But it's also, we've learned over time who the right team members are for that, right? Not everybody can do that, and that's okay. Then it might not be the right fit for them to be part of this particular crew. But many of the folks have stayed with us from the beginning, and they are all very seasoned, and that's kind of on purpose. That's how we've evolved on purpose. We're not there to be a huge agency, trying to teach a bunch of younger folks and kind of bring them up along the way. We've intentionally stayed small and had folks that are very seasoned that wear tons of different hats so that we can kind of plug and play on a much more flexible way. So again, that's just something that we've learned over time. Really over the last 4 or 5 years, we've really started to focus on more of a smaller group that's much more seasoned, that can wear a lot of hats. It allows us to be a lot more flexible and then also to kind of ebb and flow with the types of work that are coming in. So again, a learning lesson along the way, but it's an intentional sort of curated group of folks that make it kind of work. So far, so good. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious more, again, on your own story that the handful of people that come from your industry that I know tend to fall very much on the like the creative end of the scale, right? As opposed to perhaps the what you might refer to as the business end of the scale. Where do you fall on that?
On the business side, so it works out well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my team is all creatives. We have a very senior project manager that kind of herds all the cats, and I really run the business. So I started out on the creative side. My focus was on video production. So I was a producer and worked with video editors, and I did some on-site event production, things of that nature. But I always really loved the business side. So I love the organization of it all. I love the finance part of it. And so it worked out well that I had a creative understanding and I had led creative teams before, but I was always really involved in that business side. So it became kind of a natural progression. It worked out really well. And then, of course, my goal then was to find really strong creatives because that was the most important part of keeping the business running, is making sure that, yes, I'm building great relationships, but these clients need great work. And so that was the focus, was finding those great creatives. And I was lucky enough to have worked with quite a few very strong ones over my years. And so as they were looking for new opportunities, they took a look at us, and it's worked out so far as well.
Yeah, what is your approach to managing and leading creative type individuals? Because it's different, right? You can't say, "Hey, you have to sit at your desk from 9 to 5." Like, that's not gonna work.
Yeah. So, and I've learned that also because, being more on the business focused side, I'm thinking, okay, we need to get our work done and you need to be sitting in an office and those types of things. And I mean, that's part of what evolving a company, I think, is all about, is learning from both the team and also sort of the environment around you and figuring out how to adapt to what's happening. I mean, when we came back from COVID, I was like, okay, I was so excited about actually getting together with people again, but I learned it from my team, and they reminded me how strong we were when we were all remote, and that actually does work really well. And so I think part of it is just listening as much as you are telling or leading. You've really got to listen to both the team, but also to the partners and the people around you, and learn from those folks to figure out, like, are there different ways that are better or stronger or allow for more of that flexibility? And I think just really being willing to be flexible and to adapt from both the style in which we work to the types of things that we're working on, as different technologies and things evolve. It's like you've got to always be willing to be flexible and step back, and it's not my way or the highway. There's lots of different ways to consider and think about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenging topic, and I personally struggle with it. I appreciate how you described really orienting your team towards those with experience and not necessarily, the model isn't to have a bunch of early career folks and train them up. in my space, we do have kind of early and mid-career folks, and we run a hybrid schedule. But gosh, I just feel like those early career folks, if they're working alone at home, it's just going to be so hard for them. I struggle with it a lot.
No, I agree. And even like I said with our season folks, I mean, they get so excited about even coming in on just those Wednesdays. And like I said, sometimes we come in on other days in addition to that, but it's sort of like just it brings new life into just them and into their projects and that sort of thing. So I agree. I think that I feel like there are more opportunities for some of those earlier folks to have networking things, opportunities to do internships and things of that nature. We participate in a number of those types of things. We partner with different schools for internships, for just different programs that might happen over a semester where we're working on a project with folks that they can come into our office and learn some of that types of things too. So I think having lots of programs like that across several different industries hopefully is helping. But no, I agree. I really value the times that we do get together, and I feel like it does make the work stronger and the people more willing to communicate and be open and learn and listen more than just sort of sitting at home by themselves or whatever. I think, the other thing is though that there's so much video communication that often people feel like, okay, well, at least I'm having some sort of connection with other folks, right? Talking about the project or doing something like that. So hopefully the fact that we have this as a very normal part of our day-to-day communication makes it a little bit easier for folks.
Because we're talking about team and culture, and also because of the type of work that you do, I'm curious, what do you do for, the end of the year employee get together? Do you just do something super unique because of the type of work you do?
It kind of alternates, and we typically try to do stuff more frequently than just end of year, but it's largely women in our group. We do have two gentlemen who are video editors, but they're both fully remote, and one lives in St. Louis, but the other one doesn't even live in town. And so it's real easy to do girly stuff at the end of the year, whether that be, we go out and have a shopping day or cookie exchanges or, just kind of getting together and having a bunch of wine and sitting around and getting ready for the holidays and talking about that. So it varies. We're getting together, like I said, quarterly, going out for either fun lunches or maybe it's an early happy hour or it's a themed something or another that we're doing. So I don't know that it's that unique to other folks, but we again, it's that the staying small and having a relatively smaller group allows you to be able to do many of those things more frequently. You go to a baseball game together, or go to a hockey game together, or soccer, whatever it might be, or go out to a fun lunch or happy hour. It makes it easy when you only have like 12 or 15 folks. So all of that kind of it plays into sort of having that more fun and flexible culture as well.
Yeah, that's fun for sure. I am interested in the actual product and service that you're producing. Can you tell me more about that? Like, what are some current trends you're seeing in this communication to employees and investors? And not only in maybe the way it's being communicated, but like, is what is being communicated? Is that evolved in the recent few years?
Sure. Yeah, and there has been quite an evolution. So we get involved in everything from kind of helping clients figure out what their brand strategy is. So what does that overall logo and design and creative elements look like? And we're seeing folks, want to refresh those more frequently. Like, let's take a look at who we are and how we talk about ourselves. So we're getting involved in a lot of that. But the other thing that we're doing quite a bit more, especially now, is video communication. So whether that's developing pieces that are going on social media or pieces that are being shared with employees because maybe they're not getting together as often as they used to, but they want to update employees on a more personal level, and so it shows the personality of that executive or that leader a little bit more and is able to be distributed more. So we're seeing a lot more video communication for sure, a lot more need for unique social media stuff that stands out because there's just so much going out. But then people are still really interested in the printed piece, right? Having an annual report that they can see and feel and touch and flip through is just as important. So, those things kind of seem to ebb and flow, but certainly the digital communication and social media and having unique pieces that are showcased there is something that we're definitely seeing a lot more of. And being able to find ways to show personality of different folks like video is something that's happening on a very regular basis.
On the brand strategy refresh, is there kind of a current best recommendation that you make? Should companies be looking at this every 5 years or every 10? Like, what do you think the right thing to do
That's a
is?
great question. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be changed frequently, and nor are we advising people to do that because there is something to be said about, having a known brand. And when people look at your logo or colors, you're like, yes, I know that you're John Deere and you're green and whatever. But oftentimes it's more when they're taking a fresh look at they're either their business is evolving, and so they're taking a fresh look at how do they speak about themselves? And so let's make sure that the visual way that we're sharing that also is kind of evolves and reflects that. We've done that ourselves. I mean, our very first brand, we're now on kind of our third refresh in 13 years. And a big part of it has been in some major milestones that we've had where one, we changed our name slightly. And so we decided to kind of do a brand refresh at that point. And we've actually been evolving our brand to be a lot more sophisticated and simple over time because we're learning that that is kind of how our clients are looking at us. And we want to make sure that we're reflecting kind of the way that people see us and the way that we talk about ourselves. So we take a look at ourselves the same way that we advise clients to do so. And that is largely when it's, either things are becoming a little bit stale or you're just feeling like you're not reaching your audience anymore, or you've kind of been doing the same thing for a long time. It's time to take a step back and take a look at what's working, what's not working. And it doesn't always mean, rename yourself or get a new logo. It means sometimes just refreshing the way that you're doing it. Maybe you're adding a little bit different color palette into the mix, or you're utilizing icons or graphic elements that are just a little bit different and a little bit fresher. So it's kind of taking a look at some of those things, not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but just giving if you're feeling like things are a little dull or people aren't responding to you as much and it's feeling a little bit stale, then there's some real simple ways to kind of take a fresh look at that and give it a little nudge.
So what you've described in terms of this work product, it's very clearly it's a communication coming from the company to the employees or from the company to investors. Totally get it. Makes sense. Is there anything going on for kind of two-way communication? So this information is given to the audience. Is there a way for that audience to then give feedback on that content back to the company or the CEO or whoever is delivering this information?
Sure. A lot of times it's, quarterly meetings, and that's where they're communicating some of that material. Sometimes it's through intranet sites where there's open communication going on. So it sort of depends on what that feedback loop is that they've established. But yeah, there is regular, oh my gosh, this video really resonated with me, or like I said, at a quarterly meeting or an annual, they're getting direct feedback about how did that presentation go? How did it resonate with you? And some of that's the content, and some of that's the visual way that it was showcased. But yeah, every client kind of has their own, like I said, feedback loop kind of established with those different materials for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I really like what you're describing. I see the obvious value in it. And, of course, most companies, ours included, does some version of this internally, right? So not necessarily bringing on a professional partner like you. And again, it sounds very valuable, but it also strikes me as very time consuming, right? So if I tried to implement this with you all, I mean, my head is spinning. I could see like I might need one or more full-time people on my staff to manage all of this. Is that kind of the experience?
Most of the time we're working with an internal team, and there's often an internal creative team also, but what they're typically focused on is the day to day, what's happening on a day to day basis within the company. How are we creating materials that are used on a regular basis? More often than not, we are brought in for more of the specialized piece. So is it we're developing everything that goes around a quarterly meeting, or we really have this important message that we need to share with the CEO and we need somebody else to focus on it. We tend to And we've built these long-term relationships with clients so that we really become a very natural extension of their team. So we already understand their messaging. We already kind of know what their brand is. We know what their likes and dislikes are. So more often than not, they're able to say, okay, I'm setting this up for you. This is kind of what we're needing. Can you take it and run with it? And that's more often than not what we're doing. We're doing more of those specialized pieces where they just don't have time to focus on that internally, and they need a more focused way to address that. Or they don't have that internal, and all of a sudden they have this team of 12 designers that can knock something out in 2 weeks that would have taken somebody, 6 months to do if they have, just the one person inside. So again, I think it's more of that providing some breadth when they need it to cover certain things, but also focusing on sort of more of those key strategic pieces that they just don't have the time to be able to focus on because they've got their day-to-day jobs that they really need to do and stuff. Yeah.
I know we're all, sick of hearing about and talking about AI, but I'm just curious, how are you seeing that, enter into your world?
I hate that question, don't you? I mean,
I do
it's
too.
like, it's sort of like I'm old enough to be like terrified of AI, but also you need to pay attention to kind of what's going on. It's obviously concerning, especially in the communications world and in the graphic world. It's like you can write a prompt and say, "Can you write this for me?" And then it'll say, "Yeah, do you want me to show you what that might look like as a PowerPoint slide?" There's still that interest, though, in that personal connection and figuring out how that translates to real people and real things. I think AI has been super helpful jumpstarting some of that ideation, but it's not quite there yet in actually, okay, how do we bring this together and make it human focused, and and really taking a look at those nuances, and is that really the right way to communicate it? I mean, it all sounds great, but we all know it often sounds like, oh, well, that sure sounds like pretty and perfect. I think the need still for that human touch and that aspect has been great. But again, folks are able to ideate faster or to get something further along the line even before it comes to us. And so we have to really stay on top of that. We have to constantly be evolving, taking a look at what the software that we're working with does, taking a look at what new software is, making sure that we're staying educated, we're taking classes, we're looking at stuff on a regular basis. I think all of that is still required. And we've, over 13 years, we've had to evolve a lot. We used to do a ton of event work. And then, of course, COVID comes and nobody's getting together. So that work's going to go to the side, but people still need to be able to communicate. So we evolve with the way that the industry is changing. The same thing is happening with, we've had such a huge uptick in video, and now we have full-time folks inside doing video work, whereas we were kind of doing that on a part-time basis before. So I think it's just one more element, frankly, that we have to just keep staying on top of and keep evolving with. I think it's growing faster than maybe some other things have in the past. And so I think we just need to really keep paying attention to it, but also using it to our benefit, like I said, to either ideate faster or to like kind of get to some new ideas faster where we're able to, again, bring that human component back into it and still make it a stronger piece.
You've touched on it a few times, but I wonder if you might be willing to share a little bit more of how you formally think about your leadership approach and style.
That's a great question, and that too has evolved over time. I've largely pretty much worked on the business versus in the business, but on those first, first half of us being around, the first 6 or 7 years, I was actually doing a lot of the creative work and being involved in that. But I've learned that I need to step out of that and focus on the business. And also, I've hired these amazing people that have far greater talent. And so it's learning how to let go a little bit more, provide more guidance and flexibility, but also kind of always be available to sort of be that sounding board and to talk things through and to think about things in a different way. It's very hard for me to step back and let go of the reins. And, I mean, we've heard it before, the founder syndrome, and you never think anyone's going to do it as well as you can, but they do. And that's what, I had a mentor very early on in my career that was like, always hire people that are better and smarter than you. And it's really, really true. And I've been lucky enough to find a lot of folks that absolutely fit that bill that are smarter and more talented than I am. And that's what helps make our company strong. So it's learning to let go a lot more, but it's also making sure that I'm leading by example, right? I'm stepping away when I have things to do and that I'm taking care of myself and doing my things, but I'm also constantly learning and talking to new folks. It's learning by leading, but it's also making sure that I'm spending enough time listening and not just giving direction. And also just making sure that that culture stays strong, right? That we got to laugh a lot and have fun things that we're doing together to reinforce the fact that we are actually people working together and that we're not just delivering a product. So, kind of trying to balance those and continuing to evolve as much as I'm asking my team to evolve.
Yeah, stepping away is very, very hard to do, and not many people end up being successful at it, in these roles. Did you do anything formal to help you with that? For example, there's the EOS program. There's a lot of these business operating systems that try to get the founder or the CEO out of the day-to-day. Did you do anything like that?
We did. In fact, EOS was one of the things that kickstarted that evolution. We sat down for a number of different sessions. We had never really had kind of a formal organization or structure, right? It was like I'm the owner and CEO, and everybody else works and has different specialties and strong points and things of that nature. But we didn't really ever have kind of a hierarchy, if you will. And knowing that I needed to evolve, I needed to really uplift more folks in my team. And so I brought two other members of the team into that EOS mix to sit down and really have some honest conversations about, okay, who's doing what, how should we be structured, and taking a harder look at that and creating not necessarily hierarchy, but more defined roles and responsibilities. So everybody wasn't like, I don't know, am I supposed to do that? Or am I supposed to do that? Or are we always collaborating on this type of thing? So that was very helpful to develop that foundation of, okay, each person has these roles and responsibilities. And if they want to grow, maybe they're taking on a little bit of this or a little bit of that and finding different ways to collaborate. And then from there, I've also started to add personally more coaches and guidance to my personal mix. I've joined some organizations. I'm working with two executive coaches, one that's helping me more on developing sort of our next 5-year strategy, and the other one that's really kind of a big sounding board for myself. So it's those types of things as well. It was a great kickstart with EOS. We didn't stick with the program, but it was a really great way for us to develop that foundation. But then also, again, utilizing these outside partners and guidance folks to help make sure that we're regularly checking in and making sure that thinking about things a little bit differently, taking a look at what other folks are doing and how are they doing it, what are they finding to be successful, even being part of the Titan group and participating in some of those calls and workshops and things of that nature. All of those things are super important for kind of continuing that evolution and always learning.
Yeah, do you mind, sharing what some of these organizations might be? Is it like Vistage, for example?
It's not. I've joined a group called St. Louis Forum, which is actually all women leaders, and that's been super helpful for me. It's also introduced me to some other folks that I work with or talk to on a regular basis. So we have just monthly coffees or glasses of wine together, just kind of talking through some of those things. So it's been that, but it's more of a kind of a curated group of folks that I've met along the way. I've also joined a lot of like leadership societies as part of either nonprofit groups. And so I've learned a lot of things from those folks because most of them are leading or part of other companies. And so they have something to bring to that nature. So it's been more of a curated group, largely of like women in leadership, because oftentimes we're sharing very similar kind of challenges, whether that be from home life to business leadership life. So again, I think it's been a little bit more of that kind of curated groups of folks I've been lucky enough to be introduced to. So it's been good.
Yeah, that's super important to have that trusted group of peers that you can lean on at times.
Sure.
So 13 years, that's a good run of success. What's the future look like for you?
That is a great question. Yeah, lucky 13 is our year, so we're super excited about that. But I think the next 3 to 5 years, it's really continuing to look at how we evolve our business, our work product to kind of stay ahead of the curve, meeting the demands, looking for new clients, looking for new industries, keeping those relationships going, diving deeper into the relationships that we have, and continuing to take a look at our model, making sure that it's working, making sure that it stays flexible, making sure that it stays strong, but also finding those moments of joy and laughter and giving back. Like I said earlier, giving back to the community and being part of a lot of nonprofits, whether that be through donating of our services, our creative services to help their materials become stronger, or donating our time so that we feel like we're kind of living this life and giving back to something. I think all those things will remain important. So I think it's constantly evolving and laughing and enjoying all at the same time.
No, I totally agree with you. I think that's a really good point. As I mentioned, I learned about a different part of your industry from this conversation, and I want to learn more. So, if other folks are similarly intrigued, how could they find you?
Oh, sure. Website is probably the easiest way, ballyhooworkshop.com. You can find us regularly on Instagram and also LinkedIn. Everything's at Ballyhoo Workshop, so kind of keep that unique. But yeah, we're always open to conversations. We're always open to learning. We're always open to collaborating. Workshop is in our name for a reason. That's we want to sit around the table together, whether that be a virtual table or a real table, learning from each other and making great work together.
Yeah, that's awesome, Katie. I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.